Thank you very much, Chairman McGovern. Ranking Member Cole, nice to be with you to talk about H.R. 1319, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. This bill that's before us today has the power to save lives and save our nation's economic future. We began this reconciliation process when I introduced the 2021 budget resolution 25 days ago. From the start, we have been upfront that the sole purpose of the budget resolution was to provide the option of using reconciliation to deliver critical relief and enact the American Rescue Plan. It was always Plan B. Plan A was always to come up with a bipartisan solution. When the determination was made that that was not going to be possible in time to provide desperately needed urgent assistance to the American people and the American economy, we embarked on this process. And we are in a race against time. As the chairman mentioned, this week we passed the 500,000 death mark from coronavirus. More Americans have died in the last year from this disease than died in World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War combined. So while debate is important and deliberation is important, we also need to get on with it. We have the plan to beat the virus, to safely reopen the schools and quickly and equitably distribute vaccines. We have the plan to deliver immediate relief to working families and small businesses and support communities struggling with the economic fallout. As the chairman mentioned, the polling on this is overwhelming. 76% this week of Americans support this plan, including 60% of Republicans. There are validators across the spectrum. The U.S. Conference of Mayors overwhelmingly in support of this legislation. Chairman Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve strongly in favor of this legislation. Just this week, 150 top CEOs from around the country strongly support this legislation. The list goes on and on and on because virtually everyone recognizes how critical this is, not just to stop the pandemic right now and to get us returning to normality, but to provide for the foundation for an economic recovery, which is going to take a long time. Once the virus is over, we're going to have serious costs and ramifications of this virus to deal with. So we're going to pass this legislation. We're going to turn this pandemic around. The American people will support us and will be grateful to this Congress for doing its job. And that's for accepting the responsibility in a national natural disaster to provide relief for the American people. Before I conclude, I just want to comment on a couple of the objections that are being raised to this bill because I think they need to be stated. Chairman McGovern addressed one of them, that's the issue of the money being spent. Let me make it clear, all of the money in this proposal will be available immediately when it is passed in a few weeks. It will all be available immediately. And there are processes, waivers that can be granted to make sure that it gets implemented and deployed as quickly as possible. So that's important. What are the common arguments? This bill needs to be more targeted because people will be getting the money who really don't need it, and states and cities that really don't need it will get it. That's undeniably true. I don't think we will argue that there are people who will benefit who probably could get along without this assistance. But consider what that would take. Everyone in this hearing understands how long it takes to set up a need-based operation, no matter what it is. We'd be into the fall or winter of next year before we actually could deliver any assistance if we actually tried to set up the huge bureaucracies and systems that would be needed to do that. And finally, the question of whether this is too much money. Again, Chairman Powell says it's not, many others say it's not, but some of the arguments that are raised against it just don't reflect an understanding of how things work in this economy. I saw Minority Whip Scalise the other day talking about the proposal to raise the minimum wage and that it would create a $54 billion deficit over 10 years, and that would be $54 billion of reduced economic activity. It's actually exactly the opposite. $54 billion of deficit to the government is $54 billion of injection to the American economy and the American people. It would be a stimulus of economic activity. That money would go into the people's pockets, go into the economy, we'd be churned many times over. So you have to understand what we're doing here. And I think we have made a strong case. The American people understand our case. And I look forward to providing this much needed relief in a couple of weeks and passing it in the House later today. With that, I yield back.